Hello, hello. Thank you so much for coming back here again and being with me for episode 12 of the Power and Potential podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Butu, and this interview that I'm about to share with you is so powerful. So this conversation is with Trish Tutton, who is a yoga and mindfulness teacher and speaker. She also just so happens to be somebody that I know from high school. So we go way back. Just a fun fact for you there. She is really curious about how being more present can make us happier and healthier. And her passion for sharing mindfulness comes from her own experience of working in the corporate and nonprofit sector. During that time, she experienced the incredible benefits of having a mindfulness practice. She was more energized, happy, and focused, and felt better equipped to manage the stresses of her work. Since then, she has taught hundreds of professionals how to transition from overwhelmed and ineffective to focused and efficient. And I've been following Trish on Instagram for a while now, and I've loved the stuff that she's been putting out there. All of her content is super good, super relevant, and I knew this conversation was going to be good, but I truly did not realize how good it was going to be. We touched on so many important topics, and we went in directions I never thought we'd go. And the best part is that I was having big breakthroughs throughout the whole entire conversation. So I know that the same thing is going to happen for you. If you follow me on social media, or if you're on my email list, or even if you've been listening to all the episodes of this podcast, you most likely know that I'm a huge advocate for self-awareness and self-development as a whole. My whole mission in life is basically to help other people see the value of becoming more self-aware and focusing on developing themselves, because everything else falls into place after that. The amazing thing that happened during this interview was that I noticed how closely related mindfulness and self-awareness are. Everything started to make a whole lot of sense during this interview. You know, all the little pieces of the puzzle started coming together. And I've been on such a high ever since. So I cannot wait for you to hear this interview with Trish, and I will not make you wait any longer. Here we go. Hey, Trish, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It is my absolute pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to be talking to you, especially about mindfulness, because it's something that is like more and more personal and more relevant to me. And so, yes, it's a little bit selfish. And I have all these questions because mindfulness really comes up a lot in my conversations day to day. So I can't wait to have you and have like an expert tell us what it's all about. So
it's coming up more than ever just because I think it's, you know, it's kind of one of the secrets to success, right?
Yeah.
If we want to up our game doing anything, it's going to help.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that in the context of your introduction. Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
Just through experience, really. Yeah. Just through, doing it myself and having a regular practice and then seeing all the incredible benefits in my life. So it's really experiential, which is honestly like the first thing I say to people when I'm teaching them. Mm-hmm. Even if I'm like in a conference setting or in a workplace setting, literally within the first couple minutes of sharing what I do with people, I always ground in this is an experience. Mm-hmm. So this is like playing a sport or playing an instrument, right? You could say, okay, I want to, be a soccer star, and someone could give you all these books on like strategy, and you could sit down with a pro athlete and they could talk to you about, but it's like, you're not fully going to understand it unless you get your butt on a field, you get a soccer ball, you start kicking it around, like you actually do the thing, right?
Totally.
Same as, playing an instrument. You could read all the books about playing guitar, but until you pick it up and you start to like form the chords with your fingers and strum along. So that's kind of the same thing with mindfulness. We can talk about it. There's a ton of academic studies. We can, get all intellectual about it, but at the end of the day, it's an experience, and that is when people start to see the benefits.
So cool.
Yeah.
Because we think a lot. We like to think a lot. And it's funny that you say that about how, you can know everything about playing a guitar, but until you pick it up, you're not going to be able to play the guitar, right?
Yeah, you're not going to fully understand it until you can actually play it. Yeah.
And I think we do that to ourselves in a lot of things. Like even when it comes to our professional lives, it's like, I'll read all about this thing, and I'll start a business, no problem. I'll study it for like a year. And then afterwards you're like, okay, what progress have I made?
Well, and the interesting thing is mindfulness and mindset. I mean, yes, they both have the word mind in them, but they're very similar in that way. And I know you do a lot of mindset stuff. And like a coach of mine and a good friend of mine, she always says, like, let's move it from shelf help to self-help. So we can read every single book on mindset. We can know all the right things to do, but until we actually do them, we're not going to get the benefits. So it's mindset is totally the same. You got to actually do the things.
Right. And like try and fail, right?
Yes, which is kind of what meditation, which is the formal practice of mindfulness, is all about. It's getting comfortable. You're never going to continue that practice unless you get comfortable failing literally over and over and over and over and picking yourself back up. And to me, that's one of the reasons why it's such a really crucial practice, I think, for entrepreneurs. For people in business.
Yeah, it's so
fall
interesting.
Down a lot.
Well, no, exactly. That's exactly it, right? And it's like, okay, so I have so many questions. I don't even know where to start, but I know we kind of skipped over like, who is Trish?
Sure, yeah.
So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you, and then I'll jump into all my questions.
Totally. Okay. So my name's Trish Tutton, and the way I introduce myself is I say I'm a speaker, I'm a yoga and meditation teacher, and really specifically, I help create calmer and more happier workplaces and employees through the teachings of mindfulness. So I do a lot of in the workplace stuff. So I do lunch and learns. I have like an 8-week program where I'm in the workplace and we're building on the skills of mindfulness. And I do keynotes and workshops at conferences and all that kind of stuff. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So you mentioned meditation being the formal practice of mindfulness. So this is something I find really interesting. So I do meditate, and I've seen how I've progressed through kind of my practice and how uncomfortable it was in the very beginning and how extremely comfortable it is now, you know, but I know that in a lot of conversations that I have, it's me trying to tell people you should really try to meditate. And you're like, oh my God, I could never do that. I could never sit down. I could never, all these blocks. Right?
Story of my life.
Exactly. This is why I'm bringing it up to you. So what do you say to those people? Like, how can they transition into practicing meditation?
Yeah, I think it's a reframing of what we think of meditation. So I literally am on a mission to help people understand what meditation is, and that it is not what so many of us, and I include myself in this, used to think it was, clearing your mind.
Yeah, or not thinking at all.
Yes, everyone has this idea that in order to meditate, we have to clear our mind, which is definitely not true. There's a really great author out there, and he has a podcast and things around meditation. His name's Dan Harris. Have you heard of him? 10% Happier. Anyways, he has this really funny kind of anecdote that he says, or just thing that he says to people who think that they have to clear their mind. He says, basically, there's 2 ways that we can have a clear mind. One is if we are absolutely like the Buddha, we're like enlightened, and he's like, you know, no one is like that, basically. And if you are, congratulations, woohoo, like throw yourself a little party, great. Or the other way we can clear our mind is literally if we're dead. And if that's the case, well, I'm very sorry. Like those are literally the only 2 ways that it can happen. So we need to get this belief, we need to wipe the slate clean when we're talking about meditation and people thinking that they have to clear their mind. Literally, the best way I describe it when I teach it is like, you're going to bring your focus onto one thing. And that one thing could be very different. It might be your breath. It might be a mantra, which is like a phrase that you repeat. It might be counting your breathing. It could be one of many different things, but you pick a focus. And then what you notice as soon as you decide and commit, okay, that's my focus of my mind, really quickly, within seconds, you're going to notice your mind do the whole squirrel thing, like shiny things, distraction. Because that's what our mind is designed to do. It's designed to think. It's what a human mind does. And as soon as you notice yourself distracted, you don't need to get mad at yourself. You don't need to be like, man, I really suck at this meditation thing. I'm never trying it ever again.
Yeah, exactly.
All you need to do is bring your focus back to whatever your initial focus was, the breath, the mantra, the counting, whatever that was. So literally focusing on one thing, seeing your mind get distracted, and then refocusing. That's what meditation is.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's not about clearing our mind. And literally, it's like my personal mission in the world to get people to understand that, because it's so empowering. Because then people go, oh, wait a second, I can do that. That's easy. You want me to just get distracted and refocus? Of course I can do that. I get distracted all the time. Right?
That's funny. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Yeah. That's what we do best.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
But instead of letting yourself wander off for like forever in your distractions, the practice
try
is
to catch yourself sooner. Like try to, and you will, and you've probably seen this in your own practice, that you catch yourself sooner and sooner. And I mean, some days it's still like, it's an ongoing battle, but you also, I think with time, get more comfortable and just get more okay with seeing that your mind is a bit distracted, and knowing too, when you talk to people, it's like, oh yeah, I experience that too. It's a totally human thing, that we don't need to be so like rigid and strict with ourselves and think that we can do something like clear our mind when it's relatively impossible.
Right. Totally. So for newbies who want to start trying to meditate, as like a kind of a baby step, what would the first baby step be? Would you say like 1 minute, or what would be your recommendation?
So one of my teachers has said to me, meditate for as long as you can without getting discouraged. And I think it's really great advice, because it's going to be different for everybody, right? It's like, okay, so like I said before, I live in Banff, Alberta. So I'm in the Rocky Mountains of Canada, and I grew up in Ontario, as you already know. Yeah. And I skied as like a 13 or 14-year-old. We did like, I don't know, night skiing after school. Yeah. And I basically peaked at like 13 or 14. I could do all the hardest runs because it's Ontario skiing. It's essentially little tiny hills, right? And then I got to Banff and I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to live here, I want to ski. So I began skiing, and I've learned that the same rule is true for skiing as is for meditation. You want to go for as long as you can without getting discouraged, because the moment you get discouraged, and I'm going to use this ski metaphor to start. I'm having a great day on the hill. I'm feeling really strong. Legs are, burning, but strong. Yeah. And then I get to that point where we get to the bottom of the hill. It's the afternoon, and I go, should I do another run? I'm feeling so good, right? Well, someone at my door. I'm not going to answer that. Well, the thing is, if I go and do that last run, I'm probably going to be exhausted. I might fall a bunch of times, and I'll start to get discouraged. And I don't want that to be the end of my day. Because if that's the end of my day, tomorrow I'm not going to want to go back. Yeah. Right? I'm going to be discouraged. So same thing with meditation, as long as you can without being discouraged. And for some people, that's going to be, a minute, 2 minutes. Some people, it might be 5 minutes their first time. But I would say definitely start under 5 minutes, and 1 minute is great. Something is better than nothing.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. I think that in combination with knowing that you're supposed to have thoughts, and the whole idea is to have the thought and then bring it back to whatever you're focusing on. I think that's like extremely empowering. Those two things together pretty much means anybody can do it.
And it's building a habit too, right? So if all you can manage at the beginning is 1 minute a day, I'd rather you do 1 minute every day than 7 minutes once a week on one day. Right. Because what you're doing is you're building up that habit that this is something I do every day, or 4 or 5 days out of the week, or however many you can manage. And then once you solidify that as a habit, then you can start to say, okay, well, now I kind of want to add some time, right? This is actually starting to be enjoyable. I'm starting to experience some space between my thoughts where my mind is a bit more restful. So 1 minute now feels like it goes by, in the blink of an eye. So now I want to do 2. And that's how you're going to actually form a really sustainable habit.
Right. With baby steps.
Yeah, totally. Okay. I mean, it's like anything. It's like diet. It's like exercise. You know what I mean? Totally. It's anything lifestyle. It's like mindset.
Totally. So, okay. So, how when you go to the gym and you exercise and you have the best workout ever, you feel you feel amazing afterwards, right? Yeah. So I figured out the peak time for my meditation by like waiting for that feeling. I was like, if I was ending too early, I'd still feel like I did when I started, right? Right. So I'm curious to know, what I mean, for people who don't meditate, how do they know when it's working, kind of? Like, what is their, you know what I mean? Like, what is the indication that,
That's a really good question.
that it's actually like they're making progress?
Yeah. I think, again, you're going to start to see things in your life shift. Even something as simple as, your reactivity go down. So meaning that those unconscious reactions to things. So I remember at one point after meditating for a couple of years, I was like walking down the street, and you know how our phones are so like, it's like they rule us. They ding or they buzz, and it's like, who is that? Like we just have to know immediately, right? It's a reaction. And so I remember walking down the street, and again, I live in this like beautiful place. There's a lot of beautiful things for me to look at while I'm walking. And I felt my phone buzz in my pocket, and literally my hand reached into my pocket, and then there was like this moment in my head where I paused and I was like, wait, what am I doing right now? It was as though, just like when you meditate and you see that you have thoughts and you see that they're pulling you away from your task at hand. I saw that my phone was distracting me. I saw that it was pulling me away from the experience of, just walking down the street and paying attention to cars not hitting me or me not walking into other human beings. But I saw it clearly. It's like time slowed down a little bit, and I had my hand in my pocket and I had it on my phone, and then I basically made a choice. And this is what is so empowering to me about the practice of mindfulness and meditation, that we now have a choice because we're consciously aware of habits and of reactions. I was then open to choose. I thought, okay, well, I can do this if I really want to, but do I really want to look at my phone right now? Actually, no. And I took my hand out of my pocket and I just kept walking. Thought, I'll look at that later. Like that's not actually, what I want my focus to be on right now. So little things like that, I think people start to see occurring in their lives. It's really about, I guess, heightened self-awareness, right? You start to see habits and patterns that you do, and you start to maybe even see how they are not skillful or they're not helpful to you in that moment. And you start to feel empowered to make a different choice. That's just one of the things that I saw.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and then, the other thing is, I was just going to say, the other thing is maybe the way you interact with your family, your people you're in relationship with. Maybe you're just if you have a high level of anxiety or stress in your life, you might feel a little bit more space from that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so powerful because, one thing that you said that I loved was that it just creates, I don't know, it almost interrupts autopilot. Right? Like instead of constantly operating, especially with our phones.
Yep.
I notice that with myself all the time. If I don't watch it, then I become like glued to my phone. And then afterwards, you're like, what am I even doing? Like, what am I looking at? There's nothing to look at. You know what I mean?
I know.
So it's like,
we're on autopilot. It's exactly. We're just doing things because we've always done them that way. We're in a pattern. I think they say something like 90% of our everyday thoughts are thoughts that we had the day before. Right?
Which is pretty scary.
I know.
It's so scary. So it kind of, that in and of itself is like a massive perk, right? The fact that it stops autopilot and that you have a second to witness, first of all, what's going on, and then to make a choice.
And the thing is too, when we're on autopilot, our mind is wandering often. It's not in the moment. And this is really the definition of mindfulness, right? It's just having your mind in the present moment. And so when we're on autopilot, doing things the way we've always done, our mind starts to wander because it gets bored. And in fact, what they say is that this is really not a happy state for human beings. When our mind is wandering, we are not happy. Often it's because our mind's wandering to negative things, first of all. But they actually have done studies like on people commuting to work, which is basically like our least favorite activity that we do all day, right? You're commuting to work. But when they asked people to pay attention, to be mindful during their commute, they enjoyed it a ton better than they did if they were just, phased out and on autopilot, not knowing whether the light was red or green as you pass it by. So it really increases our happiness, our ability to actually enjoy our lives, which our lives are just made up of moments. And if we're not going to be present to each moment, we're going to be on our deathbed being like, what was that just passed
what just
me by?
happened?
I wasn't paying attention.
Totally.
So like big picture, that's
yeah. Okay, so you're driving to work and you don't have any music on. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to process this right now. So when you're mindful on your ride to work.
Yeah, you could have music on. Why not?
Okay, so what is your mind actually doing? Like, can you be thinking about stuff and still call yourself, like, can you still say you're being mindful? Or is it more like paying attention to your surroundings? Like,
yeah, I would say more paying attention to your surroundings. If you have music on, really listening to that music. What are they saying? What's the, what does it sound like? How does it make me feel? How does it make my body feel? Does it bring up any emotions for me? What am I seeing in my, what's coming in? It's really senses, right?
Yeah.
What's coming in through my visual sense? What do I hear? What do I feel? What's the temperature? Things like that. It's not that thinking isn't a mindful activity. If you're thinking on purpose about something, if you're deciding, on my drive to work today, I'm going to give some thought to this challenge in my life, and I'm going to see if I can kind of problem solve it. That to me isn't being mindless. Being mindless is like, my drive to work is something I do 5 out of 7 days a week. It's boring, it's dull. And so my mind starts to wander and I'm not choosing where it goes. It's going wherever the heck it wants to go, which often is things like into the past where we're judging things that happen. Oh man, why did that happen that way? I wish it had happened differently. Why did I say that thing? Why didn't I say that thing?
Yeah. Or
it's wandering into the future and you're starting to worry and feel anxious and stressed about maybe something in your work day that day. That's kind of two different things, because you could be looking into your future and into your workday and thinking, okay, I know that a challenge is going to come up. How am I going to skillfully work with it? What can I do to make this better? Or your mind can just be wandering aimlessly to it and you can be catastrophizing that thing and just, unskillfully thinking about it. So I think it's the difference between conscious thought or just, your mind, letting your mind go wherever the heck it goes, which is often negative.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. I love that. I find myself, I often don't want to listen to music at all because I almost feel like my brain is like noisy enough as it is. You know what I mean? And just sometimes music just adds to the noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So sometimes for me, I just turn everything off and and I'm very intentional about just like not thinking about anything, just being like, wow, look at the street light.
Just observing your current circumstances and conditions.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, so I think that mindfulness is like particularly difficult for us as humans because we tend to either, I don't know if there's some science behind this, but I feel like people are either leaning towards thinking in the past or leaning towards thinking in the future.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, do you find that people are often in both, or are people generally one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely in both, but we have tendencies. So one of the meditations I often teach to people, just to build that a bit more awareness of like, where does my mind go when I try to focus? Where, what pops into my head when I'm meditating? One of the practices so you focus on your breath, and then as your mind wanders, instead of just noticing that it wanders and coming back, you notice the specific thought and you actually label the thought. So for instance, if it was something about, a project deadline that's coming up tomorrow and you're thinking, how am I going to get it done on time? You'd label that like worrying. Right?
Oh, interesting.
So with that practice, when you do that over and over, you might start to see patterns. And often people do. They either see that the thoughts are, like you say, either reflecting on the past or projecting onto the future. So we often have one tendency or another, although both can happen.
Right.
Before I got into this work, I actually worked as an event planner.
Okay.
And so planner, obviously, I tend to think into the future a lot.
Yeah.
So I notice that a lot in my meditations, but it's not bad. It's not good. It's nothing to punish yourself for. It's just a way. It's just an awareness. Like, okay, that's interesting. I tend to really think about and plan and feel anxious about the future. It's just good to know. It's kind of, it's the function of my brain, and it helps me sometimes to, again, work a little bit more skillfully with my own brain, knowing that it has that tendency.
Yeah, totally. I find that I'm 100% in the future.
Yeah.
If I don't watch myself, I'm always in the future. I think I've always been that way.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to notice that and I think it's something that's common with high achievers or people who really have huge dreams, visionaries. It's like,
it might also tend toward the female side of things too. It's a bit of a stereotype, but
so it's really interesting. I'm super passionate and excited about self-awareness and helping people become more self-aware.
Yeah.
Because I think with that comes, I don't know, just a whole new set of doors of opportunity.
Yeah. So much more choice. You know what you're good at, you know what you need help with. So you don't need to struggle through the things that are difficult for you. You can just be like, I'm going to seek someone's help for that. I'm going to get someone who's good at that to help me. You know what your triggers are. Yeah. So in that moment when somebody says or does something that triggers you, instead of lashing out on them, you're like, this isn't about them. This is about my little it's incredible what self-awareness can do for us, and for leaders, especially like leaders out there in the workplace. Like, self-awareness is huge for these people to be able to lead teams effectively, right?
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And like, I think something that I didn't really connect together until this conversation is how mindfulness and self-awareness are so interconnected.
They're so similar. They're so similar.
So cool.
Have you heard of, Google has a mindfulness program called Search Inside Yourself?
Okay. No, I haven't heard it.
So there's a book by the same name, and they talk a lot about the fact that it's the same thing relatively. Even if you look it down to their definitions, like there's so many parallels to draw. And awesomely enough, meditation and mindfulness are a skill that helps us develop more self-awareness too. So it's just,
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's like maybe the biggest selling point about meditation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to be a good leader, especially if you want to be a good human being, if you want to be good at what you do.
Exactly.
Self-awareness. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I see this as being super relevant for anyone, like regardless of what people do.
Yeah.
It just leads to a lot more fulfillment.
I was actually chatting with a student the other day, and I was breaking down this one technique, and interestingly enough, I was able to use it earlier in the day. This really annoying, silly thing happened to me but I was with my husband. We were here at home, and I was trying to figure out these technical things, these speakers. Anyhow, I had missed one of the switches, and he found it. And so in that moment, I was like, get frustrated. I'm like, how did I not see that? I'm feeling a bit ashamed, a bit embarrassed that I missed, this one little switch. And I could feel myself contracting toward him too, because he came up with the solution. He thought it was funny. He was giggling. It was funny. It's such a silly little thing. No big deal. But I could see myself starting to feel those emotions and contracting and being like, oh, I don't like you, even though you just solved my problem. Now I'm just annoyed with myself.
Right.
But purely that fact that I was aware of those things. And I think I take this for granted sometimes, because we all hear, and we've all been in scenarios, especially with our partner, right?
Yeah.
Little happens and we take it out on them when it's really about us. So that moment could have been a lot more volatile, I think, if I didn't have that self-awareness to be like, okay, I'm angry at him right now because I'm feeling embarrassed. I'm feeling ashamed. I'm feeling a little bit silly. In fact, I'm not mad at him. I'm actually very grateful that he showed me the answer.
Yeah.
But you could see how if that self-awareness isn't there, and I can even think back to situations in my past where it wasn't there, where that could have just become a huge fight. Totally. I could have taken out my frustration on him. He then would have been like, I just helped you. Why are you mad at me?
Yeah.
Like, so these, it's interesting because I'm starting to really kind of work on these benefits for my own like marketing purposes and things like that. So I'm really looking into my own life and seeing what are the benefits. And there's one right there. Like, that could have been a fight.
Totally.
How about stopping fights in relationships for a benefit?
It's so true. And you know what's really interesting about that situation is that if you weren't aware enough to notice what was going on in that particular circumstance, and you just like swept it under the rug, whether or not you reacted in the moment, right? Because sometimes we feel things like you might have felt annoyed with him and not said anything, like held yourself back, but
totally.
if you didn't process that, it just stays inside of you, right? And then that just builds. It just builds with the next little irritating thing he does, and then there you go, you have 10, and now you have like a serious backfire, right?
Exactly. So no, that to me is one of the, and again, back to your question about like, how are people going to see that this is working? Yeah, they might start experiencing things like that in their lives where they can see, you know, often we have patterns with people, especially family members and loved ones and our spouses. Like we have patterns with what triggers us and what snowballs and gets into that fight that maybe we always get in or whatever it is.
Totally.
You might start to see yourself catching that before it escalates. And having that moment of like, okay, I'm in charge here. I can choose. Do I want to keep going in this path and make this into that argument that never ends well, or do I want to make a different decision?
Right. Totally. I also find that it's something to pay attention to with my kids. Like,
oh, I bet.
So the other day I had this, like, I can't even remember what happened, but I was not in a very good mood.
Who knows? Could have been anything.
Yeah, it really could have been anything, but I know I was not happy. And then so I was getting ready to go to the gym and I put my hat on and I was like fixing my hair and I finally got it right. Everything was good. Yeah. My daughter walks up to me, like she wasn't even in the room. She walks up to me out of nowhere and just like flicks the top of my hat and it flies off. I lost it. And I was like, because most of the time I catch myself. Yeah. But in that moment, I like was incapable of catching myself. And so I reacted immediately. And then, and then immediately after that, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? You know? And I like had to apologize profusely to her because I felt, I mean, she's 4, but still like these things are so important as a parent, right? Yeah. Because if I can't regulate my own emotions, what am I teaching her?
Yeah, totally. And you know, the flip side of that coin is, okay, no, you didn't catch yourself before you reacted, but you caught yourself in the second best time, right after. Yeah. And you were able to kind of do that bit of damage control. And I think the other side of this coin is that, yes, mindfulness, we're trying to be a little bit more self-aware. We're trying to be a bit less reactive, you know, reacting to our emotions, reacting to all of these thoughts that flow through our head on a given day. But we are human. Right. And we are going to make some mistakes. And we are going to, screw up sometimes. And we are going to react. It's going to happen. And so in that moment, you know, having that sense of kindness and compassion toward yourself for those moments when you screw up a little bit, or when you act in a way that maybe in hindsight, you know, wish you had caught yourself earlier. I think that's a really important side of the mindfulness coin too, is to find this way to treat ourselves kindly. And in a world where, you know, we all have this really heavy inner critic in our mind, it can be a pretty radical idea that we want to actually start treating ourselves like our own best friend or our own like biggest cheerleader, or, you know, because if you try anything that's difficult, and I will say that the practice of mindfulness is difficult, you know, to keep seeing all these thoughts that go through our head. And, but if you want to do anything difficult and succeed, you kind of have to get okay with screwing up from time to time and not beating yourself up in that moment. Not being like, I'm horrible at this, I should never try again. Having a sense of patience and compassion with yourself. Like, okay, I tried my best. That wasn't necessarily how I wanted to show up in that experience, but I'm going to take that and learn for next time.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. I just thought of something I want to ask you. And this might be totally random, and you might be like, why are you asking me this? But I'm curious to know if you see any connection between mindfulness and emotional intelligence.
Search Inside Yourself book. Definitely go back to that. That is what that program is based on. And it's really what I base my workplace programs on, is the intersection of emotional intelligence and mindfulness.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, I'm really, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, as we become more self-aware, it's really difficult to not become more emotionally intelligent, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like always really fascinated about how some people have an ability to really understand other people on a really deep level, you know, in the sense of like, even before they could identify their feelings,
Right. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
So, like, I tend to notice, I think I'm fairly emotionally intelligent. I don't know why. I always wonder where I got this from.
Yeah.
But I find it really intriguing that we don't all have it.
Yeah.
So do you see that as something that's related in the sense that, is it like correlated with your level of mindfulness or like something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, studies have shown that people who practice mindfulness are definitely more emotional and emotionally intelligent, for sure. They are related. And really, when we're practicing mindfulness, we're giving that present moment attention, not just to maybe our external environment. We're also giving it to our own thoughts, our own physical sensations, and our own feelings, our own emotions.
Yeah.
So the more we can get in touch with our own emotions, the more comfortable we are with other people's emotions too.
Mm-hmm.
And mindfulness really encourages us, as far as emotions, to not cling to some and avoid others, right? Ooh, that happiness, that joy, that success, that abundance, like I just want more and more of that, and that's all I want to experience. And like the negative stuff, the grief, the loss, the depression, the anxiety, I just want to push that away. What mindfulness really encourages us to be is neutral. So any emotion we experience, we want to be able to give it our mindful attention in a neutral way, without that clinging to some and really pushing away others. So what that really does for us is, if it gives us kind of more capacity to feel more emotions. And I know you follow a lot of Brené Brown's work, yeah? Yeah. So she talks about like that scale of emotions, right? You've got like neutral, and then you've got like the most positive and the most negative. And that if we're blocking out, or I guess I should say, if we're blocking out, a portion of the negative, which is what we tend to do, we're actually numbing out the other side as well.
Right, so right.
When we can give any emotion our mindful attention, right? Our attention in the present moment, a neutral attention, we build more capacity to feel more. So instead of saying, oh, that's grief, I don't like it, I'm actually not going to feel that. I'm going to, binge Netflix. I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to eat that chocolate. Instead, we say like, okay, can I just give this my neutral attention, not being for it or against it, just observing it. And then we build more capacity to be with any emotion. And what I've experienced in myself is, the more capacity I have to be with my own emotions, the more capacity I have to hold for other people and their emotions.
Right.
So, there was something I was going to say there, but now I forget. Oh, I know. Do you know, what does everybody say when they start crying? What's the first thing people say?
I'm so sorry.
Right. So we have this, again, it's an aversion to sadness, or maybe it's grief or loss, whatever it is. We don't want to feel it ourselves. We think it makes other people uncomfortable. So we say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What I've noticed in myself, again, like the catching myself with, autopilot reaching for my phone. I've also caught myself, crying in front of somebody, almost saying I'm sorry. Almost, I can almost see the thought come now before the action or before the words. Yeah. I start to see it, and then I'm like, I'm not apologizing for this, because this isn't wrong. This isn't bad. This is just an emotion. And I find I used to be really uncomfortable, like a lot of us, when someone would cry. I feel like I have way more capacity to just be like, it's okay. I'm here with you. Whatever you're feeling, I'm not uncomfortable. Do your thing, let it out. So we're building more capacity, back to, your idea about emotional intelligence, capacity to be with our own emotions and other people's.
That's awesome.
Isn't it? It's incredible.
Like, so many things are coming full circle for me in this conversation.
And don't we just love Brené Brown?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Brené Brown is amazing. So funny enough, when you were asking me earlier, do I listen or do I follow Brené Brown? My mic was muted.
Oh,
so here I am, like, talking to you, and you can't hear me, and I didn't even know.
I saw you nod your head.
I know, that's why using a camera is super useful.
Yes, definitely.
Anyways, so what are the things that you find are kind of the biggest issues that you find at workplaces when it comes to mindfulness?
Yeah, or like maybe issues that mindfulness can help people solve, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, is what I'm thinking. Yeah, so there's this growing trend of what they call presenteeism.
Okay.
So we have absenteeism, which are like, people are sick, people are injured, people are, on stress leave, whatever it is, let's take it into an office situation. Their butts aren't in their chairs, right? They're gone. And then there's presenteeism, which is actually when the employees are physically present, but they're not working at their full capacity because they're mentally checked out.
Interesting.
Now, it could be many things. It could be, they're just distracted and they don't know how to focus their mind very well, which obviously meditation is basically brain training for us to focus better. Could be, maybe they're checked out because they've got financial issues at home and they're preoccupied.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're worrying. Again, their mind is wandering and worrying.
Yeah.
Maybe they or a family member has a health issue, that is chronic and very stressful and creating anxiety. So there's many different reasons, but that people are mentally not there, which is, again, obviously, if we're training ourselves to have our mind in the present moment, that's going to help with those employees who are, for one of many reasons, who are checked out, who are disengaged. The other thing that I always notice, so like I said, I was an event planner for several years before I started this side of my business. And I just noticed really a lot of negativity in the workplaces. We live in this society where it's like TGIF, right? Yeah. It's all about Friday. And we're literally, our chances of having a heart attack skyrocket on a Sunday night because we're dreading Monday morning.
Wow.
Yeah, it's actually, I can't remember the statistic, but it does skyrocket a certain percent.
Wow.
So I think there's just this view, and I know that I have had it before, and I sometimes even still struggle with it. I have to say, doing something I love, because I think it is so ingrained in us that work has to suck.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because it's work, it sucks, and it's dull, and it's boring, and don't we all just hate our bosses so much?
Yeah.
Right? It's just this growing kind of negativity, and it exists in the world outside of work, but I think work is the biggest place where we experience it. We complain so much about work, and definitely, the practice of meditation and mindfulness absolutely helps our mind tend toward the positive more, even if it's just that growing awareness that we tend toward the negative, right?
Yeah.
We're just aware, that's interesting. My mind tends toward the negative, but I actually can make a different choice.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So when employers find you or identify kind of your service as something that they need, do they do it out of a place of strictly business, or is it mostly like they care about the people feeling satisfied and happy and
I think that's a big part too. I think a big part of it is just this growing realization that workplaces are more than just a paycheck, and that taking care of your employees' mental health and physical health, really looking at them as, a human being, not just a job number or a job title, is actually really beneficial to your workplace, both in relation to your bottom line, in relation to everybody's everyday experience of the workplace, and the fact that we spend so much freaking time there, we might as well be actually enjoying it, know?
Right.
Instead of just working for our weekends and working for our vacation and, when I'm retired, I'll do this. Like, we can actually enjoy every moment of our life.
Yes.
We don't have to just, and again, back to that kind of conversation we're having around autopilot, how much of this whole belief of work has to suck, work is hard, I hate work, how much of that is just autopilot?
Yeah, totally.
What if we start looking at the parts of our job that actually we love?
Yeah.
And maybe once we realize, wow, I really love that part of our work, maybe there's a way we can do more of that.
Right.
So just really helping people kind of shift, like I said at the beginning, helping workplaces be happier places to be and calmer places to be, because, just stress is out of control, first of all. Yeah. So stress is always going to exist in our lives, whether we have a job or not. Things are going to happen in our lives that we actually would wish wouldn't happen. Yeah. And because we wish they wouldn't happen, they create us stress because we feel out of control. But but that's always going to happen. And so instead of trying to create this life, which this is never going to work without stress, why not actually start to learn some tools for when times get tough? I've met so many people, and it's interesting. It's interesting, and it's not at all a surprise that people often come to me and find my work when what has hit the fan.
Right. When it's almost too late at that point.
Yeah. And really one of my missions is like to get people to start to use these tools and practice these tools when life is good. Let's learn this stuff when life is good, because then when life gets hard, in whatever season that is you go through, whether it's a loss, of a person or a job or whatever it is, you then have the tools to lean into instead of trying to figure it all out then.
Yeah, you're so right.
Like a lot of these companies are going through changes, and, so I live in Alberta, obviously. And so there's been huge things going on with oil and gas and people getting laid off. And the kind of stories I'm hearing about people's mental health is just, it's devastating. And I just think, man, what if they had these tools before? It wouldn't make everything rainbows and puppies, but it would just help them have those tools beforehand.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point, because that's something that we do in everything, right?
Yeah. And it was my story too. Really, one of the main things that, I was doing yoga, I've been doing yoga, which is a mindfulness practice, for a decade now. But what really prompted me toward a deeper meditation practice was actually, and I don't even know if you know this, I lost my mom about 6 years ago.
Oh, no way. I didn't know.
Yeah, to breast cancer. And
oh, wow.
It was
great to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. And it was, it was just one of those moments where, what hits the fan. It's like, man, what is going on in my life? And what am I doing for a job? It actually propelled me into this job now, because I was like, I'm not going to waste my time anymore.
Interesting.
But it propelled me further into a meditation practice, and just realizing, I don't want to work for the weekends anymore. I don't want to work for my retirement. Like, I really want to enjoy every day. And I was realizing at the same time, as I was an event coordinator, I was like seeing that people needed this in the workplace. My colleagues were like on the verge of burnout and stress leave and sick leave. And I, on the other hand, was actually like feeling pretty good, because I had all the tools that I had learned and I was using them at work. And then I thought, hang on a second, like, not only can I help other people, relieve their totally unnecessary suffering, I just realized, life is potentially really short. My mom was 55.
Wow.
She was like super healthy, and it was a total shock and a total, but in one way, and it's still kind of hard to say this, but in one way it was a gift, because it brought me that clarity for myself, and it brought me to the work I do now, which I'm just so grateful for.
Yeah. Wow. That's phenomenal. It's like such a bittersweet, like classic example of bittersweet, and what it kind of reminds me of? It's like any failure, any tough thing, any bad thing that happens in our lives, it's really easy to fall victim, so to speak, to the situation. Right. And of course, we all need time to grieve. And even when it comes to like a loss, like a job or a friendship or anything.
Again, we're human. We have to experience the emotions.
Exactly. And I think mindfulness really helps to like bring you back and like start to see the good things.
I think it gives me perspective. And I see that in my students too, that it gives us perspective to know that, things are going to happen in life, really big, challenging things like a loss, like I and everybody else has experienced too. Or little things are going to happen too. And it helps give us the perspective, like, how sometimes you're going through a challenge, and I forget where I heard this, and they've said, ask yourself, is this going to matter tomorrow? Is this going to matter in a week? Is this going to matter in a month? It kind of gives you that perspective to be like, okay, hang on. Life is short. I don't know what tomorrow brings. So I'm going to, whatever's happening to me in this moment, maybe all I'm grateful for right now is breathing, but that is something.
Totally. Totally.
So it's just the perspective that there's so much more going on, and, our life is a big picture, and it's easy to get caught up in the minutia of the little annoying stresses of every day. And finding a parking spot and being on time for your appointments. But it's like, is this really going to matter, a month from now or a year from now?
Totally.
Like, what is the big picture perspective? Or even something simple like that example I gave with my husband, like, that went through my mind too. Is this worth a fight?
Totally.
Right? I'm going to still love him no matter what.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't worth it. Like, I love him and I don't want to get in a fight, and this is silly anyway. So it helps me not get caught up in those little tiny annoyances that can actually take over our life.
Yes.
And we can basically, if we let those things, we can become a constant reaction to everything that's going on in our life.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. And I mean, I think everyone can say that they've had those days where one thing throws you off and then your whole day has gone to shit, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like,
and
that's
again,
what I find. Yeah.
It's like, start again.
Yeah.
Just like we do meditating, start again.
Yeah. You know what? I find, so I have anxiety. Like, I'm a highly anxious person, and I feel like the older I get, the more anxious I get.
Right? Yeah, me too.
Thing.
Me too. Yep.
Yeah. And, I find that for me, like, meditation is the only thing that can bring me back to earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That like just like stops it in its tracks and brings me back to like a normal human person.
Yeah, totally. Well, because anxiety is basically just our mind, like thought after thought after thought, catastrophe, making it worse. So if we can give our neutral attention to those thoughts, right, without being for them or against them, just paying attention to them as they go by, but not, what do I usually say when I'm just thinking of the things I cue during meditation, not feeding them with our attention.
Yeah.
Right? Not like giving them that fuel.
Yeah.
We kind of starve them a little bit, and we just notice them objectively, like you would watch a sunrise or a sunset. You just kind of like watch it pass by. You know that it will pass by.
Right.
And the more you know that, then the next time you have the same thing happen, you can actually kind of rest a little easier. Like, I know this is going to pass. It always does. Yeah.
I love that. It's so empowering.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I think one of the main things that you said that I keep thinking back to is the fact that it brings you back to having a choice. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think a lot of us as adults feel like you don't have a choice, that you're just living life because this is how it's supposed to be. And you have a job that sucks, but this is how it's supposed to be.
Right.
Right. And from like the littlest thoughts or the littlest things that come in your head, and you have that choice, you also start to see that you have choices in the much bigger things too.
Yes. And it's also like on a deeper level, going more into, the kind of spiritual side of meditation, it is really this growing wisdom that our external circumstances and conditions don't dictate our happiness.
Yes.
So that our happiness comes from something deeper, and it comes from within us, right? And but again, it kind of comes back to what you're saying too, like the choice, like we have the choice. Yeah. So, say you lose your job, and automatically often we think, okay, we lose our job. That's a bad thing. I should be devastated. This ruins my life. I can't be like, but understanding and being able to tap into that place of us that, is kind of unaffected by anything. Right. It's kind of like unshakable by anything that happens outside of us.
Totally.
Right?
Because no matter what feels like, like your world could be a whirlwind, but when you actually focus on the moment, like the actual moment that you're in, you realize you're perfectly okay.
Right. Or you can at least pick a few things that are okay.
Right. I know you might not be perfectly.
You can identify a few things. No, and I'll come back to the story, and I think this is exactly why, the loss of my mom propelled me into this, because it's one of those things that like you tell people and they're like, how did you even get through that? And to me too, if I think about my life before then, I think, man, if someone had ever told me that was going to happen, I'd be like, I won't survive. I won't be able to. Yeah. But what we see in these challenges is like the incredible capacity for our hearts to transform challenge into love or into something greater. And I've seen this in my experience totally. I feel like it's my heart's capacity to transform that really horrible thing that happened to me into something that is good. And the more we can experience, the more we realize like, man, who I am is not that external circumstances. It's not my job. It's not whether I'm married or not, or I have a great relationship. It's not about how much money is in my bank account, and just understanding that, like there's so much beyond that, and that we don't have to rely on those external things to be perfect for us to be happy.
Right. That is so powerful.
I know. And I think it's a lifelong lesson too.
Agreed. 100%. Yeah. Because no matter how mindful you get, there's always more. There's always
going to be something that if it's taken away from you, you're going to question, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably a skillful technique. It's to look at what would that thing be for me, that if I lost it, my world would come crumbling down. But at the end of the day, like we see it all over the world, people going through, just the most devastating challenges, and we see them come out the other side. And it's really a testament, I do think, to the quality of our hearts or our souls, or whatever you want to call it, to be like unshakable, to be able to get through anything. And the meditation tool is just really helpful for that.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I want to follow up on one thing, which is, like you said, the spiritual side of meditation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we didn't really get into that very much, but like a lot of people do use it to kind of connect with God or connect the universe or whatever type of, spirituality practice.
Yeah. Whatever you believe in. Yeah.
So like, does it need to be that, or what, or is it like you evolve your meditation to get to that level, or like, how does that work?
I think it comes down to your motivation, why you're practicing. And I think, in the last 30 years, we've seen kind of the spiritual side of meditation become secularized, which is beautiful and lovely, because it has opened it up to so many more people. And that's what I teach when I go into workplaces. I am never saying the word spiritual. I'm never talking about the Buddha. Like, that is just not. And that's fine. Yeah. Honestly, you can leave all that stuff out, and it can be a life-changing practice.
Totally.
Just secular, what we would call mindfulness meditation. It is transformative, and it is incredible. And I think it just, comes down to your motivation. I think, why you practice. I think, I practice kind of twofold. It's funny because I practice definitely for the benefits that I know science has, supported, and I'm excited about those. And I think that it's great, and I want to just teach people all about that. My practice, because I've been doing yoga for so long, and I just kind of have that other kind of spiritual side to it. For me, it is also, beyond all those benefits, it's also a way, and it kind of goes to what I was saying before, it's also a way for me to meet myself beyond all of that external noise.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's kind of like how I meet the part of me that is divine,
Right.
I definitely don't subscribe to any sort of formal religion at all, but I do believe, that there's a piece of every human being, beyond our personalities, beyond our reactivity, our emotions, our labels, our jobs, whatever it is, that is literally the heart of who we are, and that it is like pure love, basically, and peace and radiance. And so for me, I would say the spiritual side of it is the moments that I get to sit in meditation and see that my thoughts are just on the surface and start to experience a deep peace that lies within me. It connects me to that divinity that I know is in me, and that I know is in everybody else, including the people who annoy the what out of me. So it's that reminder to me, that's kind of the spiritual side. And that really is, I guess, what the Buddha taught as well. He talked about, awakening to our true nature. Yeah. So again, kind of dusting away all of this unnecessary stuff that the challenges of life weighs on our shoulders, our biases, our beliefs, our, perspectives, our politics. I believe this and you believe that. It's really about awakening to our true nature, that we're all the freaking same. Like, we all want to be happy. We all experience sadness and loss and challenge. Yeah. So that's kind of the spiritual side of it for me. But that being said, I do think that what I teach in the workplace, some people eventually do get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still so useful even without that side of things. If we're getting people to be less reactive out there in the world and flip off people less when they're in traffic and swear less at people and be more patient, like that to me is spiritual, whether you call it spiritual or not. Totally. That to me is connecting human beings together.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I feel really empowered right now.
Oh, yeah, girl.
I'm sure everybody who listens is going to be like, damn, you killed it. You killed it.
I just love talking about this stuff. I could go on and on and on.
I can tell that you're like super passionate about it, which is awesome. Like I'm just watching you and I have the pleasure of watching you on video, but I could just see you being like an amazing, engaging speaker. So one day I'll see you give a keynote live.
Well, I heard about your big goal too. Speaking in front of, what was that number? It was a very specific number.
3,191.
Okay. I have to know why.
Because, so I went to a spoken word event.
Okay. And I love her PS. I love her and I'm so jealous. I wish I could have gone. I have amazing. Some of her books. Oh my God.
Yeah. We're talking about Rupi Kaur. Yeah. I don't know how to say her last name properly.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. She's phenomenal. And I mean, I can't believe I didn't even know who she was.
Oh, follow her on Instagram immediately.
Oh, I have now. Yeah. But I was at the Sony Center. That's where she was performing. Right. And I was with my sisters and I told them, I'm like, it's so weird. Before the show even started, I told them, I know this is really bizarre, but the second I come in a place like this, the only thing that I can think about is that one day I'm going to be on that stage.
Yes.
They were like, what? Are you insane? Blah, blah, blah. Because they would never see themselves that way, right?
Like their biggest fear. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to me, I was just like, you know what? I have to stop saying that. Like, I have to actually start making it happen because like, it's always been there. It's always been in my head. Like, amazing. That's going to be me. But now.
And is that how many seats that they have there?
Yeah. So I looked it up. So I went home. I looked it up. I was like, how many seats are in that place? And there was 3,191.
Oh, I love it.
So we'll see. But I think mindfulness is going to get me there because I'm learning a whole lot about myself. I honestly didn't realize before talking to you today that like there's such a strong connection between mindfulness and self-awareness and emotional intelligence and all these things.
Yes.
And yeah, definitely. It's been phenomenal to watch like my own progress. So let me tell you a little bit of a success story.
Yeah. Please.
When I first started meditating regularly, because a lot of time I was just like meditating here and there and didn't really have it as like a regular practice. But when I started practicing regularly, I do it a few times a week. And you know what happened?
What?
I lost weight without trying.
Wow.
And I was like,
do you think you were eating differently or exercising more? Or but you were just being more intentional about what you were eating or when you were exercising.
Because I was noticing more of my emotions because I was emotional eating, right?
Right.
And so when I started noticing, okay, I feel X, Y, Z, whatever, and I'd find ways to deal with it. I was just a lot more present. And so I wouldn't turn to food when I was like feeling upset or happy or whatever. You know what I mean?
Amazing. Yeah. And you're definitely not the only one. Yeah.
It was nuts. Like because I wasn't looking for any, how I was asking you like, what's the indicator of success?
Yeah.
But like, I wasn't looking for one. I was just like, I'm just going to do this and see what happens,
Yeah. And that really is what I encourage people to do too when I teach. It's kind of like, here's the possible benefits you could receive. But honestly, don't take it from me. Try it out for yourself and see what happens. That's usually what I say to people. Do it as an experiment.
Totally.
Right? Check it out.
Because that was unreal, like when I like weighed myself after 6 weeks, I was like, wait a second, I didn't change anything. And
so I have a question.
Yes.
What do you do when you meditate?
So I usually turn off all the lights.
Yeah.
I make sure no one can come in the room because I have 2 kids. So I wait till they're asleep usually.
Remove distraction.
Yeah, exactly. Or if my husband's in the room or whatever, he'll put earphones on his phone or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm in complete quiet. Usually I'll just sit like on the ground cross-legged.
Okay.
And close my eyes, like kind of like how I'm sitting right now. And then and I go for 20 minutes.
Yeah. And so what do you do when your eyes are closed?
I just focus on my breath. Like I focus on the sensation of my breath coming in and out. And then obviously my brain wanders and then I come back and the breath, the actual feeling of the breath coming in and out is what centers me.
Cool. Yeah. And so what you're practicing is called mindfulness of breath.
Okay.
That would be the technical name for it.
Yeah. So I find that like fairly easy. I don't find it difficult because it comes back to my breath. And I find that if I go any less than 10 minutes, I don't feel the immediate benefit.
Got it. Yep.
You know, but when I go like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then I'm like a whole new human at the end.
Amazing.
Like, it's crazy.
And that's great. I mean, 15 to 20 minutes is lovely. I think what they say is that the benefits start to kick in. And again, they're going to be different for everybody. Like, one person might not experience all of them, but the benefits start to kick in, they say, at a practice of between 6 and 8 minutes a day.
No way.
That's encouraging to know. But, you know, I think your experience is valid too. You saying, I actually feel better after this many minutes. That's, you know, that is what it is. That's your experience. But with the studies that have been done, it's anywhere between 6 and 8 minutes a day on average.
That's awesome. Like, that's totally doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good.
Yeah, put the little tracker, for the people out there, put the little tracker on your phone that tells you how much time you spend on social media, and you will see that 6 minutes ain't a thing.
So true. It's so true. No, 6 to 8 minutes is like super, super doable.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, like we were saying before, you know, start with 1 if that's what's doable, and gradually work your way up. Because if you start with 6 and you're like, that was literally torture, you're never going to do it again. That's
so true. That's so true. Yeah. And they always say, like, when you're developing new habits, pick something that you can actually stick with.
Yeah.
Instead of something that you're going to be like,
I've heard the advice, make it so easy you can't say no. Which the one example that I was reading about this was like, say you want to form a habit of flossing your teeth every day, literally floss 1 tooth a day, and like build that into a habit. So then you're habitually just flossing 1 tooth a day, and then start adding on.
I love that.
Second tooth, add a third. So same with minutes of meditation, right? Start with 1 minute a day. If that's all that you can actually wrap your head around.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, amazing, amazing. This has been so nice. I'm sure that people are going to get so much benefit out of this. I really appreciate that you came on here.
My pleasure.
So why don't you tell people where they can find you and how they can connect with you?
Totally. So what I'd actually love to share with your listeners is if they visit my website, if they go to trishtutton.com/download, there's actually a free gift there. So it's a PDF, and it's called 1 Minute of Calm at Work. So
amazing.
Stressed out or overwhelmed at work, if you go to trishtutton.com/download, you can download this PDF, and it's basically, it goes Monday through Friday and gives you 5 different ways of experiencing just 1 minute of calm while you're at work. 5 different kind of techniques. So what I'd love is, like, if people are into it, you can download it, you can print it off, post it up in your workspace or in your lunchroom or whatever, to just give you a few more, again, like we talked about, kind of tools to lean into when you are feeling scattered and frazzled and overwhelmed at work.
Perfect.
I'm also on, what am I on? I'm on Instagram, Trish_Tutton, and Tutton is Tutton.
Yep.
I'm on Facebook, Trish Tutton Mindfulness. I'm on LinkedIn under my name. So
all
connect with me in a bunch of different places. Yeah.
Okay.
And
cool.
I do often travel for speaking engagements and things like that. All my info.
Okay, awesome. That's perfect. So I'll put all of your links in the show notes. So
amazing.
If any of you want to go grab that download, then go to the show notes. And and I always encourage everybody to reach out and say hi to you.
Yeah.
And let you know where they learned about you. So you guys should do that. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Thanks, Miriam. I so appreciate it. I just am feeling on top of the world talking about what I love. So happy to be here.
Me too, especially after a day of like crazy tech issues. This has been Okay, thanks so much. I'll talk to you later.
Awesome.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with Trish during this conversation, and I hope that you had as many light bulb moments during this conversation as I did. It was incredible. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, there are a few things that you can do. The biggest and most impactful thing is that you can head on over to iTunes and give the podcast a rating and review. That's what will help more people find this podcast amongst the hundreds of thousands, if not more, that exist out there. So I would really, really appreciate that. After that, come on over to Instagram or Facebook and let me know what you thought about this episode. Nothing, absolutely nothing, makes me happier than hearing from you guys in my audience. Also, I'll catch you next Thursday with part 2 of the year-end review process I talked about last week. That episode is all about how to create a 2019 plan using all of the super valuable information that you got out of the review. So if you haven't done the 2018 review yet, definitely go back and listen to episode 11, then download the free workbook that I made for you, and you will see all the magic that will come out of that process. It is literally amazing. Then that way, when next week's episode comes out, you will be ready to jump right into planning your 2019. So much magic in that process, I can't even tell you. I can't wait for you to give it a shot. Okay, friends, that's all for now. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. You are amazing, and I have so much gratitude for you. I will speak to you next week. Bye for now.